Welcome to the Sunday edition of the Expendable Show. I'm your host, the Expendable. So I know I've been slacking. Usually I do 2 shows a week, but I've only been doing the Sunday show. So it seems that my job wants me to travel on Wednesdays all the time now. So I'm probably going to move my during the week show to Thursday. So if you're a subscriber, just watch for the notifications. Most likely it's going to be on Thursday. I think that's a pretty safe day to get the early week news done and out of the way. So if you like my show, like, subscribe, and ding the bell. I see I keep continually be getting more followers, so I like that. And then check out my TikTok page, the.expendable.sh. I think I'm like close to almost 1 million views on there or something like that. So I do really well on TikTok for some reason. I think I've figured out the algorithm or something. The algorithm sucks on YouTube, so they don't like me. They censor me, I think. So let's go into our statistics. So if you've never watched the show, I do go into some key statistics that I think are important that we should pay attention to, financial stuff, gas prices, etc. So let's start off with Doge. So they haven't updated the Doge website in a while, so we're still stuck at 190 billion, which is $1,180.12 per taxpayer. And then on the debt clock, they're showing 545 billion, which is $4,858 per taxpayer. So like we've been discussing, the Doge has really slowed down, and I think it's because they just can't. It's kind of moot at this point because the Democrats are never going to let them codify those cuts. So we'll wait and see what happens. Hopefully, maybe Congress, maybe the GOP congressmen and congresswomen can get together and come up with some kind of plan to codify some of those cuts. So gas prices under Joe Biden in 2024, they averaged $3.30 a gallon. Right now we are at $3.14. So I traveled this weekend from my house in Georgia all the way up to Ohio, where my family's at. And gas was pretty consistent all the way up until like right around Cincinnati and Dayton. I was seeing some pretty, like, all the gas prices all the way up there were lower than $3.14 a gallon. They were under $3.56, $3.57. So that's what I was seeing all the way up until I got to about Cincinnati. Cincinnati and Dayton, they were up in the 270s. I think 280 in some spots. So the South wins again. Well, they didn't win again. They lost the first time, obviously. Trump's approval rating. So he's kind of holding steady where he's at. He's like in this 46 point something range. So he's at 46.6 right now, which is fine. I think he was like at 40 like low 40s in his first term at this point. So he's a lot more successful in the public opinion right now. His disapproval rating has fell under 50% for the first time in a while. So that's something I'm paying attention to. I think we're going to see him maybe spike his approval rating pretty soon. I think with the Army parade and the 4th of July, we were supposed to see the No Kings protest on July 4th, but I think they realized that was pretty unpopular for America's birthday. That was going to make a lot of people mad. So I don't know. From what I understand, I don't think they happened. So mortgage rates, we're seeing some movement there finally. In 2024, the average was 6.7, and we've been seeing for the last few months, like we've been in the low sevens. So right now we're sitting at 6.79. So we're right around where Biden was at. But with the economy doing what it's doing, it should continue to go down. So when we look at the Dow Jones, the Dow Jones is heavily favorable right now. It's excelled beyond my expectations. So it closed on Friday at 44,828, which is really close to the record. We're getting close to the Dow Jones record. He's already hit the S&P record, and the NASDAQ, he already hit the record on that. So we're going to see the Dow Jones hit a record probably this week, I would imagine. So that's good. That's showing that, Trump knows what he's doing. This tariff thing worked out in his favor. America is benefiting from it. If you're not a MAGA person, I feel bad, because we told you he was going to do this. He told you he was going to do this, and he went out and he did it. So I don't understand why you guys continually doubt Donald Trump, because he's mastered the United States economy. He can fix it anytime he wants to, and he's proven it twice now. But for some reason, liberals don't like a good economy. That doesn't make any sense to me. But so let's go into the Diddy trial. So we have a verdict, and I know a lot of you probably have already heard, but I'm going to break down it. I'm going to break down the Diddy verdict a little bit, and we're going to talk about what I think happened, and we'll see what we come up with. So Sean Diddy, P. Diddy, Diddles, I don't know what he goes by now, but he is currently awaiting sentencing after being found guilty on 2 federal counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. He was acquitted of the more serious charges of sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. His sentencing date is October 3rd. They're going to do a remote hearing on Tuesday to see if it can be expedited. So it sounds like Diddy's people want to hurry up and get him sentenced. What his potential sentence could be: each count carries a maximum of 10 years. So let's go worst case scenario for Diddy. He gets 2 10-year sentences because he's guilty of 2 charges. So 2 10-year sentences could, if they run them consecutive, he could do 20 years. But they generally don't do that. Generally, they run it what they call concurrent, where you serve both sentences at the same time. So he's going to probably do 10 years maximum. Now, legal experts are saying that he's probably going to get 4 to 5 years. The defense is looking for like 21 to 27 months. So he's not going to get 10 years. I would like him to get 10 years, but I don't see that happening, especially with the judge that he has. So Diddy was denied his bail. He has to remain in custody because of the concerns of his flight risk. Obviously, he has properties in several countries. And the judge cited his past violent behavior. So that's a contributing factor as well. They look at that stuff, and it's they do like a pre-trial investigation once you get sentenced to see what your risk factors are. Generally, you don't even realize they did it. So they're supposed to interrogate like people in your inner circle. But I've never seen anybody actually contact anybody. So he's been in jail since September of 2024. So if you don't know, that his time started then. So from September to now, he's already got October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. He's got about 10 months under his belt already. So if he gets what his legal team wants, 21 to 27 months, he's only going to do, he could do less than a year. So we'll see how it goes. But he is going to get time counted that he's been sitting awaiting trial. That time does count. One thing that I'm not sure that a lot of people know about this case. So Diddy's lawyer, he has 2 lawyers. They're a husband and wife combination. They're these Italian couple. They also are representing Luigi Mangione. And I don't think a lot of people know that. So they're tag teaming these 2 big profile cases. That's what these specific 2 lawyers do. They only do high profile cases. I did an entire TikTok on it. if you want to check my TikTok page and go watch it. I'm not going to put a lot of time in it today. So the first prosecutor that he had, Damian Williams, was a Biden appointee. And when Trump got elected, he said, I'm going to resign before Trump takes office. And he did. So when we're looking at this case, and I've looked at it very, very in depth, one thing that I noticed, and I brought this up several months ago when this whole Diddy thing, when they started going through the pre-trials and some of the court hearings, I noticed that they're not building a massive case. They're isolating it to Cassie Ventura and like a couple other people. So we didn't see this big Diddy bust. And it strikes me because they made such a big deal out of his raid when they went in there and they said, oh, we got all this evidence. We've got videos and we've got all these things. We didn't see that in the trial. We didn't see it. So what was on the video? What did they find? So I'm really concerned with that. Why they took the time to do that whole circus of a search on Diddy's properties, and none of that came into play. It was Cassie Ventura's domestic violence issue. She was getting paid and stuff like that. And like she kept going back to Diddy. So as far as the trafficking goes, I'm not real sure why they even brought the trafficking charges up. Because if you look at all the statements, Cassie Ventura kept going back to Diddy. So it's one thing if you're taken and then put into trafficking and you're forced to stay there. That's a crime. But we didn't see that testimony come out of Cassie Ventura. What we saw was that she used to date Diddy. They broke up. She started dating someone else, but she kept going back to Diddy. That's not trafficking. That's just a messed up relationship situation. And Diddy beat her up. That's domestic violence. But there's no trafficking in there. They didn't even present it. I don't think the grand jury never saw a trafficking. I don't understand how the trafficking charges got put on there. That really throws me off. And I've gone through everything that they've made public and everything that's gone through the trial. I'm just not seeing it. So it makes me wonder, what did they not show? What did they keep from the courts? Did they take all half of this evidence and go, we don't want the public to know this, so let's just pretend like it's not there? And I feel like that's what happened, because what we didn't see, you've got people like Jaguar Wright and Allie Carter who have done nothing for the last year but make video after video after video telling all the stories of all of the roofing that got used, the children that were involved, that there was all of this information that those two girls threw out there against Diddy and several other high-profile people. But we saw none of those people come to that. They were never subpoenaed. They never subpoenaed Jaguar Wright or Allie Carter. And we never saw Jay-Z, who they're saying Jay-Z was like basically the co-Diddy party guy. We didn't see him. We didn't see J-Lo. We didn't see Beyonce. We didn't see Ellen DeGeneres. We didn't see Justin Bieber. They're saying Bieber was a victim, but now we can't call him a victim because nobody asked him to testify against Diddy. None of those truths of those high-profile people came out. They covered it up. Now, when we go back and look back at Damian Williams, the first prosecutor, the first district attorney of the Southern District of New York, he removes himself. So Trump appoints another lawyer because that's what Trump does. When he's in charge of all that. He can appoint whoever he wants. So he had a conservative guy, and he basically inherited this half-done case. So he had to finish the case the best that he could with basically no information. And I kind of think that it was set up like that, where they knew, when Trump gets elected, and then Damian Williams was like, all right, so if I remove myself, nobody will blame me for this case. If I throw the case, they'll blame it on this Trump appointee. And I think that might have, been a factor there. But the prosecutors did not present all of the evidence in this case, and it's a tragedy. A lot of people are going to get away with a lot of really heinous crimes. So there's your Diddy update. We'll see what he gets sentenced to. He'll probably get a slap on the wrist. Seems like that's what this trial was all about, giving slaps on the wrist. Let's talk about the big, beautiful bill. So the big, beautiful bill was passed in dramatic fashion the day before the 4th of July, so July 3rd. However, through valiant efforts from our wonderful Hakeem Jeffries, who grandstanded valiantly, the problem is he didn't have enough cocaine to really endure the process. He ran out of steam and just walked off the stage. But he did like 10 hours of talking about nothing. So allegedly it was cocaine. Let me get it straight because I don't want to get fact-checked or canceled or sued. So Hakeem Jeffries tried to delay he knew he didn't have the votes to stop the bill, but what he wanted to try to do was he wanted to postpone the bill's vote long enough to where Trump couldn't make a giant 4th of July America's so great speech. That's what he was trying to stop. And he ran out of gas and ended up saying, I'm done. And then on the 3rd, later in the day, they voted it in, and Mike Johnson and his guys all had this really cool little, you could tell they were so happy with the bill passing. So what's in the bill? I know we've talked about it a little bit, but let's talk about it because they have made amendments to it and done some different things to it. And obviously, we're not going to talk about all 900 pages. There's a lot of junk in there I don't like. But we're going to talk about the key points. So the tax cuts, Trump's tax cuts are extended. The tax cuts that he made in 2017 that Biden rode through, they're gonna be permanently extended. So Trump's the tax cuts for Americans will forever be Trump's tax cuts until somebody comes in and tries to rewrite the tax laws. So there's going to be a Medicaid overhaul. Now this is where the left has tried really hard to intimidate and scare the people. They're trying to say that Trump is going to eliminate Medicaid and everyone's going to die. That's as far from the truth as possible. Yes, President Trump this bill is going to trim a lot of fat. Okay, there's no doubt about it. I don't think anybody on the right is ever gonna contest that. Now, what the Medicaid part of it does, it's going to introduce work requirements and tighter eligibility checks. So when let's say you go to your human services office and you're out of work and you're an able-bodied person and you're able to work, you don't have any major disqualifying disabilities or crazy criminal charges or anything. And you're like, hey, man, I just got laid off. They're going to help you out. They're going to say, okay, we're going to give you these benefits. But they're going to say, you have to also, to get these benefits, you have to complete X, Y, Z to get back to work. Because our job here is to not hold your hand and keep you afloat for 6 months until you run your course on your unemployment benefits. They're going to hurry up and try to get you back out into the workforce. Which it sucks. I know sometimes when you lose your job, you're just like, man, can I just take a month break? I've been working for 15 years and I'm tired. They're not going to let you do that because then that month break turns into 6 months of just sitting on your unemployment and just doing the minimal efforts to get back to work. So they're going to stop that. They're saying, oh, millions are going to lose coverage. Yes. Guess what? Millions of people are going to lose their Medicaid coverage. Eric, how could you ever say that? Well, because people are going to go back to work. They're not going to need Medicaid coverage. That's the difference that the Democrats don't tell you. Trump is going to put people back to work. He already did this in his first term. It just wasn't a law. Trump tightened up the Medicaid qualifications and said, everybody get back to work. We got too many able-bodied people sitting around collecting government benefit checks. That's what this is all about. It's, hey, what's up, G bro? So we're not looking at Trump as just going to pull all the benefits. He's going to plug everybody into the program. He's going to say, you guys need to get back to work, period, now. So there's a border security boost. It allocates over $140 billion for immigration enforcement, including funding for a border wall and deportation operations. I would like to think that the majority, the 80-20, this is an 80-20 issue, that we're going to see this not a whole lot of kickback from the American people on, because this has been an issue and it's going to cost money to clean up Biden's open border policy. And Alejandro Mayorkas and his worthless tenure that guy was worthless. What a bum. So they're talking about some social program cuts, reduced funding for food aid and clean energy, amongst others. We all know that the clean energy is a scam, and only billionaires got richer off of it. More rich. Sorry, I said richer. The only people that benefited from clean energy was the rich people. Funding for food aid for other countries. Guess what? USAID doesn't exist anymore. So that's probably not going to happen. That's going to come from another agency. So USAID was way too corrupt. So another agency, which is going to be the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is going to oversee foreign aid now, which is probably a good idea. I would rather have somebody like Marco Rubio distributing aid than having a bunch of crooked NGOs that are basically funneling money out of the USAID accounts for terrorist groups and everything else, trafficking, arming Ukraine, arming Hamas, arming the Taliban. That's what was happening with USAID money. So I would rather have Marco Rubio monitoring that money than having people who have apparently no accountability. So then there's the price tag of the bill. So I know a lot of people are like, whoa, this is gonna make our debt go up. Our debt, well, what are we gonna do? So it does come out to $3.4 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. So let me explain this to you. So the left wants to throw this 3.4 trillion out there like it's going to happen per year. That's not what it is. It's $3.4 trillion to the national debt over 10 years. So let's take 3.4 trillion and divide it by 10. It's only going to add $340 billion to the national debt a year. So we need to really take a step back and see how the left likes to spin things. So yes, it's still $340 billion a year, but when you look at Trump's economic plan, the tax cuts, what the amount of businesses that are coming in here, the amount of tax revenue that it's going to generate, because the wealthy and the corporations are still going to pay tax. They're just not going to pay so much tax that they're going to go, whoa, we could get a better deal in another country. So they're going to keep their plants here. They're going to build more plants from overseas here. So what that's going to do is going to jump our tax revenue. Trump is depending upon this little bit of money that this bill is going to cost is going to be offset by the amount of revenue that this country is going to make during that same 10-year period. So this is a ledger issue that Trump has looked at several times, that Scott Bessent has looked at several times, and says, I think we have this leveled out. And the left wants to freak out and just listen to their stupid media instead of using cognitive thinking to say, well, they kind of worded that a little screwy. Like when you really look at it, it's only $340 billion a year. And he's keeping businesses here. So how much money is that going to generate for America? Oh, it's going to add an extra $2 billion a year to our economy. Well, It doesn't sound like that 340 billion really matters all that much anymore. So that's how Trump's looking at it. That's how Scott Bessent's looking at it. And I think with the success of the economy that Trump has already had, I have faith in this plan that it's going to be successful. So I can't wait to see the fruition of the big, beautiful bill budget plan. I like it. I don't like the AI part of it. I'm standing on that. I can't stand that now it's 10 years. AI can be unregulated. I hate that. I think it's a mistake. And where are you at, Mike Collins? Because you're on the AI infrastructure committee, and I told you about it at a time, like 4 times, and you just said, well, we'll look into that. Yep, you didn't look into it, and now it's going to be unregulated for 10 years. Congratulations. If my car gets hacked into, I'm suing you first. Now, why does the bill matter? So the bill did pass. It was tighter than what I think they wanted it to be. Basically, it was party lines with a couple holdovers. So it's 218 Republican, 214 Democrats. That was the House. In the Senate, it was super tight, 51-50. J.D. Vance made the tiebreaker, which is awesome. I think it's cool that J.D. Vance got to make the tiebreaker. I like J.D. Vance. So it marks a major legislative win for Trump. This is a huge win for Trump. Me and my dad and my brother, we were talking about this over the weekend. When I was visiting my family, this hasn't happened in a long time, having a big budget bill passed. So this is a huge win for President Trump. And I'm excited to see how this all plays out. I think we're going to see a lot of success out of this. He's basically got America set up for success for the next 10 years. So I'm excited about that. And if everything continues to get better, this is going to put a lot of pressure on the Democrats going into the 2026 midterms. So I'm really going to be paying attention to that and where the enthusiasm level goes. We start seeing more and more positive outcomes. We're already seeing like some of the countrywide rioting is slowing down. It's not gone, but it's slowing down where it's not being covered on any news anymore, really. Everybody's just like, nah, not news no more. So, I think we're starting to see the country start to turn into something positive again. So tomorrow we have a big meeting between Netanyahu and Trump. So they're going to be talking about how are we going to get the ceasefire done. Hamas has already kind of thrown the white flag out there and asked for a parlay. So I think we're going to see a ceasefire here pretty soon. I know we've been through this several times, and it's always, Hamas will or Hezbollah will do something. Somebody will do something that screws up the ceasefire. But I think Hamas has had enough. And I think we're going to see something significant get done pretty soon. So now let's go talk about my big project that I've been working on. So I have been doing a TikTok series for the last 2 weeks on the state of Kentucky. It came across me because I've been hearing more and more that Andy Beshear wants to, which is Kentucky's governor, that he wants to run for president. So I wanted to look into him and go, well, what is he? Who's Andy Beshear? Because if I've always heard that, Andy Beshear is a pretty decent governor for a Democrat. So then I thought, well, let me see what his policies are and all that. Let me look into his donor list to see who's got their fingers in him. And it led me down a massive rabbit hole. So I was up in Ohio for the 4th of July weekend. So I already had it planned out that I'm going to do some Kentucky things while I was on my way back to Atlanta. So I stopped in Williamsburg, Kentucky, which is basically like the first town you come into on I-75 coming into Kentucky from Tennessee. Williamsburg, I like it there. It's where Cumberland University's at. It's a pretty little university, little school on the side of the highway. You can see it from 75. I like going through there because they've got some nice facilities and stuff. And every once in a while, you'll drive past, there'll be a softball game going on. And I've made this trip to Ohio 1,000 times, so I've seen everything there is to see. So I stopped at the rest area and I made a video like, hey, I'm here. I've been doing this series on Kentucky. Guess what? I'm on Kentucky soil now. And that video went crazy, and everybody was really happy that I came to their state and blah, blah, blah. So I go and I'm at my parents' house. And so I was like, yeah, I better check in on my TikToks and see if there's anybody trying to ask me something. So I'm going through it and I see a message. It's just it says user and it's got a number. It's not attached to anything. Like I can't identify who it is, but it says, pull up then in London. And I'm like, pull up in London. What a turd. So on my way back, I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I bet you this came out of the mayor's office. And we're going to talk about what I found. But so I go on my way back and I stop in London. And I'd already had my mind made up that I'm going to do a video in London. So I was driving around and I went, let me tell you, if you guys have never been to London, Kentucky, go to their downtown. For being such a corrupt county and a corrupt town, they have a very, very nice downtown. It's very inviting. They've got an elementary school there that looks like a prison castle. Like I feel like Robert Redford was going to come out and hold the American flag, and like on what is it, that movie, The Last Castle or something like that. That's what it reminds me of. It's a cool little town. I urge you all to go look at it someday. It's nice. Anyway, so I go and I find City Hall. So I pull in. There's a parking lot behind City Hall. I pull in. I look over. I'm like, okay, so next door is the police department. I am not going to have them reading my plates. So I pulled out of there, went across the street to this big, massive bank, and parked over there. And it was kind of secluded. And so I thought, you know what? I'm gonna do a video right in front of City Hall. You want me to pull up? I'll pull up right to the front door. So I did, and I made a video and said, I'm here in London, Kentucky, right in front of your mayor's office. And I think I'm at 30,000 views now on that video since yesterday. So I think I got their attention. So the significance of this. So when I started looking into Andy Beshear, I looked at his donor list and I found something that at first I didn't think it was anything. And then I dug a little more and I found it was something. So his top political contributor it was a person. Usually when you see these politicians, it's businesses or PACs, but not Andy Beshear. It was a person. And his name is Randell Weddle. And so I said, who is Randell Weddle? I'm expecting him to be like a billionaire CEO for Procter and Gamble or some big company like that. That's what I'm expecting. So I started looking into him, and who is he? He's the mayor of London, Kentucky. The population of London, Kentucky is 8,000 people. So how is this little small town mayor the top contributor to Andy Beshear, who's one of the top Democrat governors in the country? You would think no individual person is going to outspend the corporations that are going to donate to Andy Beshear, especially being in Kentucky and having Churchill Downs donating everything they got at every Democrat in the state. So that was concerning to me. So I started digging into Randell Weddle. And I found a lot of stuff on Randell Weddle. So I found that he was linked with Andy Beshear's campaign manager. His last name's Johnson. And Mr. Johnson gets a hold of, and the Kentucky Lantern, which is a news publication. I think it's out of Lexington. But they do this really, really good article mapping this whole scenario out. They said that Johnson reaches out to the London mayor, Weddle, and says, we need more donations. So he goes out and he says, I've got all my family members getting ready to donate. So over the course of the day, he starts forking money out and maxing out all these family members. And if you read the Kentucky Lanterns article, they have every single individual named during that he did that day. And he maxed out their maximum contributions that they can give to a political candidate. So you would think as a campaign manager that you would go, hey, about that, how did you get all that money in one day? Like, it was within 2 hours. He had forked out $200,000 in campaign funds. And so they're like, okay, no problem. And this kept going. And so London's mayor, Weddle, kept this going. And he ended up giving over $500,000 to Andy Beshear. And nobody questioned it. Then the article comes out and exploits it. The Attorney General of Kentucky does nothing. Nothing. Now, mind you, Andy Beshear, before he became governor, was the Attorney General of Kentucky. So is there some influence there? Does Andy Beshear know exactly who to talk to keep these investigations from coming back to his doorstep? I think so. And that's something we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks. Andy Beshear's dirty. He's a dirty governor. He just got on TV one day and cried. And all the women in Kentucky were like, oh, that guy, he's sympathetic towards our cause. No, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I looked into the Department of Education because Kentucky's education ranks 32nd in the United States. Why? I mean, maybe it's just because they don't have enough funding. They have $6 billion allocated to their Department of Education. Guess what? I audited it. So Kentucky lays it out, what each school district's going to get of that education money. It don't add up to $6 billion. It doesn't even add up to $2 billion. So where's that money at? Poof, gone. Nobody knows. I haven't found it yet. I'm looking. I haven't found it. Then we go, he's monopolizing industries. I talked to an older lady. She's a doctor, but she's a doctor of, she does Botox and like cosmetic surgeries, things like that. So I talked to her. She's trying to create a school, a private school, so she can teach and educate like a trade school, like what we need in this country, more trade schools. They wouldn't give her any licensing. And then they kept harassing her. Then they arrested her because they want to monopolize the industry. Because if we privatize businesses, the state don't make money. But if you have a state-funded school, state makes money. The people who go to that private school are not putting money into the Department of Education's pocket. The Department of Education is dirty in the state of Kentucky. Now, one other thing, how you might say, well, how is Kentucky such a red state, but Andy Beshear is a Democrat? One, there's the allegations that the voter fraud was tested in his first run as governor. Now, I'm hearing it, and I have a video that shows it, that a whistleblower recorded. It shows her vote going in for Cameron. He was running for governor against Beshear. She cast her vote for Cameron. It flipped the vote to Beshear. So they had these things programmed. Now you might think, well, how did that happen? The whole state's Republican. Let's look at the congressional leaders of Kentucky. Mitch McConnell, the worst congressman in history. Number 2, Thomas Massey, who votes like a Democrat on everything. There's so much trash. Rand Paul, he votes no on everything. And I know there's a lot of you Rand Paul fans out there, but I'm going to tell you right now, he is so anti-Trump that he hardly refuses to cooperate with him on anything. So is Thomas Massie. So you have a really bad batch of House members and U.S. senators. That's how Andy Beshear got away with it, because they're all working on the same paycheck. They're all working on the same money-making schemes. I can go into each one of those guys and I can show you common denominators of Churchill Downs owns Mitch McConnell. This business owns Thomas Massie. Well, that same business is donating to Andy Beshear. You have all this money. It's all intertwined. So there's a lot to unpack with this. And then you go into the Kentucky past, where it's legal to cultivate and distribute cannabis, medical grade. So what Andy Beshear advertised, he said, let's do a lottery. And the companies can put their names in the hat and we'll just randomly draw them out, and that's who gets the licensing. Well, they issued 26, and 19 of them went to outside of Kentucky companies. Andy Beshear sold out his constituency for corporate greed. And now these corporations are going to control the cannabis industry in Kentucky. You have some of the best farmland and some of the best farmers in the United States of America in Kentucky. And you're going to let outsiders from Colorado and California run it. That's Andy Beshear. But when he gets on TV and puts on his little smile and all that and says, hey guys, I'm looking out for Kentucky. I'm here for Kentucky. And then he goes over to the World Economic Forum and recites the 17 Sustainable Development Goals to everybody in Europe and says, I'm following your game plan, fellas. And spends $81,000 in federal tax money so he can have his nice, long, relaxing vacation in the Swiss Alps, hanging out with the most evil people, the biggest corporations in the world. But Democrats are okay with that. We want to turn socialist really bad, but we won't stop our own corporate people. I'm all for it. I mean, I'm not all for socialism, but I'm all for putting the restrictor plate on corporations, especially the largest S&P 500 companies, because I believe in capitalism. I believe that a business should be allowed to get as big as they want. But what I don't believe in is when those businesses get as big as they want to go influence things. I don't want you doing that. I don't want you to go buy a politician, because when you buy a politician, that politician is obligated to go lobby for the industry that will make you more money. So we can't have that. But yet we have Andy Beshear going to the World Economic Forum with Sarah Sanders Huckabee, and they sit down and they cater to these massive wealthy people and the people who want to destroy America. And he goes over there and says, look, guys, I'm doing what y'all asked me to do. You can't have. That's Andy Beshear. And that's the liberal contradicting that we see over and over and over again. We don't like corporations, but all of our leaders are invested heavily in corporations. You guys refuse to clean your house. We still got work to do on the right, but we put a lot of work in. The Democrats refuse. They just keep drinking the Kool-Aid. So Andy Beshear was just interviewed on CNN about his presidential bid in 2028. So you might say, Eric, why have you been targeting Andy Beshear? Because I know he's going to run for president in 2028. And I know he's going to get on TV with his little baby face and he's going to cry and earn the sympathy of people. And I want people to understand who really is Andy Beshear. So we're going to expose that wholeheartedly. So going back to this interview, he says a few things. So they asked him, they said, your name frequently comes up as a contender for the 2028 Democratic primary for president. You said you'll think about it. after next year. This was Dana Bash. And she said, what will make you decide that that's going to be a yes, that you'll run for president? So Andy Beshear responds and says, my primary obligation and what I'm putting all my energy towards is to be the best governor of Kentucky that I can be. Next year, I'll also be the head of the Democratic Governors Association. And I think especially in these rural states where Republican governors have not spoken up whatsoever to stop this devastating bill, we're going to have strong candidates. We're going to win a lot of elections. I don't think so. I've been like paying attention to the polling of just off of the people who respond to my videos. Andy Beshear's not getting a lot of support, maybe 5%. So 95% of the comments that I receive are anti-Andy Beshear. Maybe it's because the liberals don't watch my content that much. I don't know. But I do have some that get on there and go, Andy's a good governor. And then everybody attacks them and go, he's trash. So Beshear also criticized the GOP's Big Beautiful Bill during the interview, calling it an attack on rural America. Well, he must not talk to rural America because rural America is okay with the Big Beautiful Bill for the most part. Every bill has some things that we look. There's 330 million people in America. You're not going to make everybody happy. So it's going to have, there's stuff in there I don't like, but I still support the bill because my president that I have 100% trust in needs me to pass that bill, needs me to support his bill. So I do that because everything Donald Trump has promised, he's delivered. So he's promised me some things and I'm expecting him to deliver it and he's planning on it. So you can eat it. Eat it, Beshear. You ain't nothing. You're on your last term as governor anyway, and you're not going to be president. Sorry, not going to let it happen. The Democrat governor, Beshear, said he was going to make sure to put the country first, just like he sold out Kentucky and every market in the state over and over and over again. He promised retirement benefits, better benefits for the teachers. That's what won him the election, so they say, that he made all these promises to the teachers unions. And then he turned around and didn't give them anything. As a matter of fact, their benefits got extended to where they can't be improved until 2047. Andy Beshear, your beloved governor, Kentucky. He has turned his back on every single sector of your constituency, of your state, of your small businesses. He continues to turn his back on you. I've seen it. I've heard it. I've talked to thousands of people in the last 2 weeks. He's destroying the very fabric of Kentucky. He goes on to say, I'm going to make sure we're putting the country first because my kids deserve to grow up in a country where they don't have to turn on the news every morning, even when they're on vacation, and say, what the heck happened last night? Well, you know what? It takes time to put out a burning building that you inherited. So, Andy Beshear, I didn't hear you saying anything when Joe Biden was using the auto pen and didn't know where he was at and was destroying the country. Where were you at? You weren't telling your kids anything then. You're telling them, look away, pretend like it's not there. Well, it's there, and you're responsible. It's your man. So there's other Democrats, including Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, J.B. Pritzker, and Gavin Newsom. They're seen as candidates as well. So there was a quote that I took from The Hill that a Democratic senator who remained anonymous bluntly told The Hill no when asked if Harris should run again in 2028. He said that Harris had her chance in 2024 before losing to President Trump in November. So it doesn't sound like Kamala Harris is going to get a lot of support. Of course, we know how the liberals do things. If one rich billionaire says, hey, put Kamala back in there, every Democrat in America is going to go, yeah, that's our candidate. She's the best. Just like they did last time. They knew she was a trash candidate, and they still threw the kitchen sink in there and said, get them. Do your best, Kamala. We have faith in you. When nobody in the country liked her. But check out my TikTok, fellas. Everybody, women, whatever. And I'll keep up. I'm going to be making more content tomorrow on some of the new things I found out. I've made some interviews with some significant players over the phone in the last couple hours. So I've been busy with this Kentucky. So do me right and watch all my content. So far, you guys are doing a good job. And everybody else, because I'm going to move on to another state when I'm done with Kentucky. I am going to audit the same way Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. He's on my list. I'm going to go through him with a fine-tooth comb. So everybody be safe out there. Watch out for the crazy liberals and just crazy people in general. There's more than just liberals that are crazy. There's some crazy righties out there too. Try not to drink so much beer, especially when you don't drink that much beer. You took a break of drinking a lot of beer. Don't drink too much beer. All right, I'm out. Peace.